Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, a really warm welcome to this session. My name is Bilal Jaffer, and I cover crypto and hedge funds for Dow Jones in London. Unfortunately, Sarah Green couldn't be with us for this session, but we do have a very, very important topic to discuss today. Crypto as an asset class is still relatively new. Even if you take a look at the history of Bitcoin, it's less than 2 decades, and most of the digital assets are less than 1 decade. And countries, regulators around the world have been working quite hard in the last few years to recognize the status of crypto as an asset class. So to discuss this important topic, we have a bunch of experts who would like to shed some light on this important topic. So without further ado, I would like to start with introduction. Arina?
Hello everyone, my name is Arina Heaver. I'm a crypto lawyer based here in the UAE. So 9 years ago when I left the corporate world as a general counsel of the largest shipping group in the world and told my colleagues that I will be working with crypto people, of course people, I raised a few eyebrows, and now it's so amazing seeing so many of my peers and colleagues attending the events, attending the crypto sessions, and there's a whole crypto stage dedicated in ADGM. It's absolutely delighting to be here. Thank you very much.
Wailam?
Hi everyone, my name is Wailam. I head up the authorization and the fintech division within the Financial Services Regulatory Authority. What I do at the FSRA is that I'm responsible for dishing out licenses for banking, insurance, capital markets, payments, and crypto players. And in the fintech division, I look at the regulatory policies around both the innovation side of things as well as the regulatory policies. Thanks.
Andrew?
Hi, my name is Andre Meitzen. I'm a co-founder and the group CEO of Bitcoin Swiss, which is the oldest and largest crypto financial institution in Switzerland. So we started around 2013 with the idea to make cryptocurrencies accessible to everyone. And we're currently in the region working on a derivative trading license. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Wailam, I'll start with you. So Abu Dhabi has been an early mover, and more specifically ADGM, in recognizing digital assets as an asset class and drafting regulations around it and making it easier for the firms to come here, set up businesses, and have some sort of clarity around the status of the digital asset. Just help us understand how important is this to have like a clear regulatory understanding of digital assets?
I think the short answer, everyone will agree that regulatory and legal certainty and clarity is going to be very important. That's how business thrives, right? Without it, you can't really operate within the rules. So when we first set out on this journey to try to regulate this space, we don't have any references. We were sort of the first mover, and looking out there aren't many references that we can look to. But I suppose we took the vision that in the future, there's going to be the conversions of TradFi and NewFi. And what we did was essentially anchor our thinking around conventional principles of conventional finance. So in short, essentially, we just extended our TradFi regulations and carved crypto and digital assets as just another asset class within our framework. So just an example, if you are a broker-dealer responsible for dealing in investment activities, with that license, you're able to do spot, securities, derivatives, cryptos, perpetuals, so on and so forth, all sort of product class agnostic, but activity is still the same. So hopefully with that extension of traditional conventional finance principles, players looking into this space would have something to benchmark against, knowing that you're held to the same standard as with any financial regulations and financial institutions. So that journey, I think, has sort of been fruitful and helpful in the last 8 years. And I think today in ADGM, we are seeing the conversions of TradFi and NewFi. Exciting times ahead. Even for us as a regulator, we are learning along the way.
And Wailam, how do we find the balance between these things? So many regulators around the world, not ADGM, but around the world, some people, emerging companies, they criticize them that regulations are so hard that they can't really innovate. But at the same time, regulators' responsibility is to protect investors from, so you need to understand from their perspective as well. ADGM has been quite successful in finding that balance. So wanted to ask you, how do you find that balance between innovation and investor protection?
I don't think I know the answer absolutely to that. But I think from my philosophy, my starting point has always been, if that innovation benefits the people, it results in better outcomes, if it results in better efficiency, that's a good starting point to be. And then I think about the risks that I need to address. So perhaps from that perspective, there's sort of a reversal of mindset from a risk template first approach. Instead of a risk template approach first, I look at the benefits that innovation can bring, and then think about the guardrails that I can put in place. So hopefully I've got a team, I've got colleagues who are all very experienced in the conventional finance space, and we tap on each other for that judgment calls, and we huddle together, we jump together. So I think many of us has gone through crisis. So I think from that, it sort of hones our judgment call. So I'm grateful that I have a team that help us bring us to where we are today.
And Andre, 2025 specifically has been an important year for crypto regulations around the world. We saw late last year in December, MiCA came into full force. Then earlier this year, a lot of changes in the US regulatory environment regarding digital assets, Genius Act, we saw that as well, a couple of other regulations. And recently, UK has started recognizing, at least they have put that option that digital assets can be recognized as a personal property. So in your opinion, this year, how all this has changed the sentiment around the status of digital assets?
It was a tough year, of course, but very productive as well. So it's great to see the achievements, but there was a lot of pre-work as well that went into those regulatory, let's say, frameworks over many years. And of course, a lot has happened this year. Now all the eyes are on the Genius Act, or on Clarity Act, of course. Like in the US, MiCA has advanced. But from my perspective, what is amazing to see is, the regulatory clarity that we're having and seeing today. Because when we started 2013, there was basically no regulatory clarity. Because when we started, you didn't even know how to treat Bitcoin. Is it treated like money? Is it treated like a commodity? Treated like property? We had legal opinions going in all different kind of directions because nobody really knew what it is. Most said, yeah, it's actually nothing. So we in 2014 wanted to become self-regulated and even had to then explain why do we want to be regulated, because the crypto industry at that time was associated with not the best things around. So regulation for us was always an enabler for actually growth and acceptance of the whole industry. So that was a key driver. And then of course over the time, the regulatory framework started to evolve as well. At one point, you had clarity on that, for example, Bitcoin is treated as a property and has certain characteristics of money. Later on, you had different kind of token classifications where not all tokens are the same, not like property. All of a sudden, you had security characteristics. All of a sudden, securities law started to apply as well. Or potentially even banking law, accepting of public deposits, especially in Switzerland, if you have all, or if you commingle certain crypto assets of clients on the same wallet, like in an omnibus or pooled account, then all of a sudden it has characteristics of public deposits, right? So the crypto regulatory framework started to evolve over time. But what I think is important, especially when dealing with regulators, is that you have a regulator that understands crypto in its as a whole. And of course, we see that here as well, but where you also have some sort of importance and prioritization on the topic, because it's a very innovative and fast-growing environment, so it evolves over time. And that's just not different token classifications. We 2017-18 did a lot of initial coin offerings and supported them. All of a sudden, one of them switched from a proof of work validation mechanism to proof of stake. So all of a sudden, you had staking. So how do you treat that, right? So the requirements towards a regulatory framework are evolving over the time, and you need to have a regulator that understands that, but also the importance of it and supports it throughout the time. Yeah.
And Arina, as a crypto lawyer, from your perspective and the observation you have in the industry, is there enough education available for crypto lawyers to just learn and adapt to the technicalities of the status of digital asset? How are lawyers seeing this space? Because you can only resolve legal disputes within the crypto and digital asset ecosystem if you understand the concept and how does it work across different jurisdictions. So how are lawyers seeing this space?
So lawyers here in the UAE, we're quite privileged to be in a situation where, first of all, we have more than one regulator. We have five. We have 5 regulators, and each of them produces their own body of law. And we're also lucky that some regulators are very responsive. They run workshops. I mean, we can reach out to ADGM's regulator and ask specific questions on the points of law we are unsure. And we have that opportunity to reach out and educate ourselves. But you know, your fate is in your own hands. If you want to become a practicing lawyer at the cutting edge of technology, you have to push yourself, because you are at the cutting, like literally bleeding edge of technology. Now Web3 and AI is merging, so if you want to keep up, you have to educate yourself. I spend around 1 or 2 hours a day just reading what is happening, just to be able to keep up with my job. And I'm not talking about, you know, entering a new area of law, a new area of expertise. So there's a lot of resources there if you know where to find them and if you can go after that. But at the end of the day, it's your own responsibility to educate yourself and do the best work you can perform for your clients. One of the most interesting things that are happening, and this is what Wei Lum has mentioned, so the regulations are around 10 to 15 years behind the innovation. So by the time the regulators come up and with the new regulatory framework, the technology has moved on already. The founders and the entrepreneurs are building completely something else. And then by the time a dispute gets to a judge, gets to a court, that's another 2 or 3 years. So we have 15 years from the time when technology has already moved on. A recent case in Abu Dhabi 3 years ago analyzed the property right of a Bitcoin. I'm sure you would be very hurt if I come and take 1 Bitcoin away from you. You would feel it was yours, right? But only 2 or 3 years ago, a judge was deciding if Bitcoin is a property and can it be stolen, right? So to us, it sounds a little bit funny, but to a judge, that was very important to understand, because from there on, they can apply certain rights, or they can enforce certain rights, they can apply certain laws. And also, for the projects that are working in this space, for regulated intermediaries, it's very important to understand all of these elements, because they will receive a court order to freeze their account or not to freeze their account, or a police enforcement action, for example, against a certain account. So we are practicing law, and the founders are living the life at this cutting edge of technology, and it is very exciting, but at the same time, there's a lot of unknown. 10 years ago, when somebody wanted to issue a token, what is a token? We don't know what a token is. So we had to find the most nearest definition available at law. Airline miles, we used an example. You issuing an airline miles that you will then use, right? So you just need to find the nearest equivalent, and then eventually regulators like FSRA come up with regulations, and then they change them based on the market realities and also based on the feedback of market participants. So this becomes regulation almost by feedback from the community, which is also quite interesting and unusual in this part of the world. It doesn't really happen in many other places.
And Andre, crypto is global in nature. I mean, you can do transaction from anywhere in the world. And due to the reason we don't have comprehensive regulatory framework across the world, obviously in jurisdiction, yes, different jurisdiction, but not across the world. So if someone were to buy crypto coins from a certain jurisdiction or a certain location where the clarity is not around the status of digital assets, it is bound to arise crypto disputes. In your opinion, at the first place, how to avoid these crypto disputes altogether?
I mean, once you have a dispute, it's often too late, right? Especially in crypto, because then, as mentioned before, the dispute happens many years after something happened, and then it's difficult to figure out, I mean, what happened at what point in time and who did what wrong. So the approach that we usually have as a financial intermediary is to see that we're having a fiduciary duty at the end of the day to protect our clients. So we need to assess, for example, I mean, when we looked into the case, we had like this case study of like algorithmic stablecoin, for example. And there were a couple of examples like in the market where those ideas did not really turn out to be like that good, where all of a sudden the algorithmic stablecoin started to depeg, for example, and then you had, of course, a big problem. But I know pretty well those days when clients came to us and said, hey, can we trade this token, please? And then we started to look into it. I mean, regulatory-wise, we would have been able to trade it, but from a purely fiduciary point of view, we actually had questions. We thought, I mean, does this really make sense? And I mean, what are the risks behind it and so on? So we actually refused to trade those kind of tokens. Later on, it turned out to be the right decision, but I think we need to protect clients in a way of doing this kind of homework for them and on behalf of them as well. When it comes to listing and assessing tokens, and that goes, of course, much further than like complex structures like algorithmic tokens, but also like meme coins and stuff like that. It goes, yeah, it becomes very exotic and interesting at one point of view. But the same is also like selecting counterparties, for example, trading venues, then doing proper, let's say, like education of clients as well. What are really the risks and who at what point in time has what kind of risk? And we, for example, we front actually. We pre-finance trades on exchanges for clients in many of the cases, so they do not really have a direct counterparty risk of any of the exchanges, no matter where they are domiciled. I mean, there is different kind of modalities on how you can address this kind of topic, but our approach, at least from the industry, is to avoid those kind of disputes, ideally before they appear. And then, of course, once you have them, you receive a court order, ideally from your jurisdiction, and then you need to freeze accounts or adhere according to that. But often it's then definitely too late, right?
Arina, would you like to share some thoughts on it?
Crypto industry, we like to state that we're decentralized, we're governed by code, code is law, community is running us, all until there is a problem. Then we all look for the adult in the room, for the responsible person in the room, for the CEO who can block the account and return me my hard-earned coins, right? So this is something that I see every day, and we need to decide how are we decentralized and protocol is running what we're doing, or do we need an adult in the room who will press the switch off button and help me out? It's a little bit of an interesting situation to be in. Another issue that I see with founders is there's a dispute, they're unhappy, they come to a lawyer, help us out, I want to take this party to court, fantastic, give me the evidence. Oh, we have a voice note in the Telegram. So maybe we're not adult enough to even get to the point where we can go to the court in most of the cases. There's a lot of growing up to do in this young industry, growing up to do by regulators, growing up to do by lawyers, by judges for sure, a lot of growing up to do by the entire industry. And that is okay, we are only, what, 15 years old? How old are we? So that is okay, we're not even a teenager yet, right? So we will get there eventually, but it is quite an interesting. We flip and change depending on the day, how we want to present ourselves, and that is probably not how a mature industry should act.
And in terms of regions, obviously we discussed briefly about Middle East and more specifically UAE taking a lead. What we saw after Trump administration, quite a lot of things have changed positively for the crypto sector in the US as well. And we mentioned the EU as well regarding MiCA. Which regions, in your opinion, Arina, we'll start with you, in your opinion, are taking a lead in making it clear what the status of a digital asset is?
I'm going to shock you right now, and I will say that's UAE.
Okay.
I've been here for 18 years. We have a very developed and rather certain regulatory framework. Yes, there's some edges that we're still unsure how the regulator will apply this or that certain case. We have a lot of choice, and I love choice. I'm all about, I come from a country where we had no choice, and my family had to pack their bags and run for their lives, and the country took everything away from my parents. So I like being in a place where there's choice, where there's sovereignty, where there's freedom, and this is why I choose to live in the UAE for the last 18 years. I've been choosing it every year. So I would say that UAE is definitely ahead of the game. Yes, Trump can say they're going to be the crypto capital of the world tomorrow. That's absolutely fine. He'll be gone in a couple of years' time, right? And there will be a new person saying new things. And what I love about the UAE, the leadership consistently pushes the agenda of entrepreneurship, consistently opens the agenda of open for business, consistently pushes the agenda of everybody is welcome, capital is welcome, founders are welcome. And I love that. I love being in this environment. And another thing which I also really, really like, and a lot of countries tried to do that, but they miserably failed, we have the ecosystem. Just now we published a map of regulated entities, regulated crypto entities in the UAE. We are more than 85 regulated entities, maybe a couple of more with all the DGM recent announcements, so I'll have to update this map. And I'll publish it. So this huge ecosystem didn't grow in isolation. This huge ecosystem grew thanks to the leadership of the UAE, thanks to the policies, thanks to the regulators, thanks to people like Andre, who's building hard since 2023, right? So it takes a village to grow a crypto community, and we have achieved that.
And do you think having multiple regulators or having a choice is actually helping UAE having an advantage over other jurisdictions?
Yeah, it's a feature, it's not a bug. It's a feature, but that feature needs to be navigated very smartly and very intelligently. We also have, so we have multiple regulators, but we have multiple dispute resolution choices, which is also very important. You can choose to go to an onshore court, you can choose to go to ADGM court, you can choose to go to ADGM dispute resolution center, which is the preferred method. And to be honest, for crypto people, I think this is the best option you have. You should probably stay away from growing up onshore courts for now. So private dispute resolution, which is a fantastic method, and it's an opt-in jurisdiction. So you can be a crypto founder anywhere in the world, and you can have your dispute resolved here, because it's all great, you know, you sign a contract, you're going into a new joint venture, you're entering a new contract, and it's all, you know, happy days. But you have to think about what if something goes wrong, and hopefully your lawyers who are doing your transaction will be those grown-ups who will think about the negative cases and who will put in a good jurisdiction such as ADGM, who will and the dispute resolution such as arbitration, for example. And but one thing that is very, very important, we are a very complicated jurisdiction. A lot of regulators stepping a little bit on their toes, a little bit, sometimes maybe a lot. So you need to navigate it very, very smartly. Even very seasoned practicing attorneys making mistakes. For example, confusing DMCC for a regulator, that's not, or calling ADGM. That was the funniest article I read the other day, and I was like, wow, this is a completely new legal regime that was just invented by this individual for some reason. So you have to, and of course, don't listen to ChatGPT, because if you talk to ChatGPT, you will get all sorts of legal advice, which probably will definitely end up very badly. So navigate it smartly.
Vilo, and any views?
I think that point about having an ideal regime, I'm more neutral to that. I think every country has got their own realities in their framework. The fact that today we have a very divergent and uneven landscape around the world, the fragmented landscape, so to speak, is because every country's, every jurisdiction's starting point is different, right? So I would ideally like regulatory convergence, regulatory harmony, but I don't think that's possible because it all depends on the priorities of that particular jurisdiction. I do think that if I have a choice, I think a jurisdiction where there is one regulator that is integrated will probably make things a lot easier. In the US, you have got a problem of the CFTC and SEC, so on and so forth. So structurally, there's a reason, there's a factor to consider in whether that regime is, that jurisdiction is ideal or good for doing business. The other one is really political realities, because every country has got their own realities and priorities. And I think being situated in a common law regime helps, because this place is moving so quickly, right, that you might have the most express of rules with the best intention, regulatory clarity to the best intention. Every dispute will always be brought to the court, and the judge will have to make a decision almost on a case by case, right? I've never seen a cross-border dispute from a commercial perspective because I'm a regulator. What I've seen is very much on the resolution and insolvency side of things. And when it involves cross-border, inevitably, it always goes to the court of law, right? Because every lawyer will be fighting for the interests of their clients. Everyone will be innovative and creative and go to the court of law, and the judge have to make a call, right? So without fail, you might have the clearest of regulations, but it always goes back to the judge to protect the distribution model, the resolution model, right? And I think that's what I've seen in the cross-border resolution process. So I don't think there is one best jurisdiction or framework. Inevitably, it goes to the court of law.
Andre?
I would probably double down as well on what Irina said, because at the end of the day, I mean, we went to UAE like 2.5 years ago because of the regulatory framework, and already in that short time, we have seen that it's like adapting and growing. Of course, now all the eyes are on the Clarity Act in the US, and it's like a huge market and so on. But what is also not a given is that, I mean, the regulatory framework can change again. And looking a few years back from where we came from, especially in the US, it was a very hostile environment, especially when it got related to like digital assets and crypto. So you had regulation by enforcement at the end of the day from the different regulators. You had Operation Choke Point, basically prohibiting most of the banks to deal with crypto institutions, also AI institutions and so on. And of course, that's one extreme to the other one, even resulting in the incoming president back in the days launching his own meme coin, right? I mean, it's from one extreme to the other. Who knows where we will be in 4 years or in 10 years from now. So why I would also select the local regulatory framework is definitely for the longevity of its decisions. So you have a very clear vision, but it's long term. So it goes beyond just like election cycles. So the skin in the game at the end of the day and the longevity of the decisions here is much longer than what we see in Europe or in the US, for example. Plus, it has a very specific setup as well, that you have different regulators, just like also in the UAE, competing against each other. And you mentioned it before, sometimes they step on each other's toes and so on, but it's still a different kind of setup as we know it from other jurisdictions, because at the end of the day, I think also regulators need to compete for innovation at the end of the day, and they need to adopt to what is happening, especially in such an environment that is living extremely fast and where innovation and changes are happening very fast. So you need to have a regulator that understands it, but also grows together with it. And at the end of the day, we're living in a very global world, and I think, education, but also innovation is key in that.
And if I may, and it's only going to get even more complicated. We finally figured out that Bitcoin is property. It took courts and the judges a little bit of time. Now we have AI agents trading your crypto, right? So what is the issue? You know, how are we going to assess the intent, the agency law, the liability? Where is it going to end, right? We just had a fantastic presentation about becoming a cyborg. I'll be the first one. My hand is up. First one to inject a chip. I mean, this one is attached to my hand 24/7 already, right? It will be easy if it's a chip. And then the chip is trading while I'm sleeping. How is it going to end? It's just so exciting. But I'm happy that I will leave it for younger lawyers to worry about. That's too crazy even for me.
Yeah, it's difficult to predict future for sure, as no one has a crystal ball or anything. But what the future of regulations, crypto regulation might look like, we'll start with you, Andre, in the sense because I live in London, and a lot of stakeholders in the local community have openly, publicly criticized that the pace has been a bit too slow. Obviously, recently there were some developments, but how the future of crypto regulations might look like in the future?
I mean, one important fact, and we're already working on that, is really the harmonization across different jurisdictions. But I agree with what has previously said, Vailum, because it's very difficult, right? You have different agendas, different priorities, different environments as well that work slightly different, of course, also across regulatory frameworks. But what we have seen in Europe, and I know it's being attacked now a lot, the MiCAR framework, but in my point of view, it's already a major step in the right direction, having some sort of a regulatory framework that is going across different jurisdictions. Previously, it was very fragmented, and that's of course difficult, especially for people from the industry to trying to do business. You need to properly assess every individual jurisdiction. Then you need to have like specific setups there. It's very expensive, and then of course again, this is just a point in time kind of consideration. So the regulatory frameworks are evolving, and then you need to constantly monitor what is happening where and so on. So it gets very complicated, but also very expensive to deal with that on a daily basis. So I think this kind of harmonization approach is extremely relevant and should be done even more on a global basis. But I'm quite optimistic on that one because a lot of the initiatives are going in that direction, but it takes time. And at the same time, of course, the industry is not sleeping. So yeah, blending in AI as an example, where you have already by now, you have the first crypto wallets that are millionaires that are like guided by AI principles or AI bots at the end of the day, or agents, which of course leads to a complete new wave of a lot of questions that lawyers but also regulators will need to deal with in the very near future. And that's the next kind of evolution that I definitely see coming, but a lot of challenges as well, for sure.
Vilo?
I think given the pace of development in this space, I would imagine it has to be a hybrid of effective and adaptive rules and regulations and effective and progressive court system, right? Because again, you have the best of rules with the best of intent. There will be dispute, there will be crisis, and then the court of law, the judges and the lawyers would have to make their representations and make decisions along the way. And then from those lessons learned, the regulations will then start to also be amended and enhanced to address future issues. So I see it as a symbiotic relationship between the regulations as well as the court system. And I can, if you look at the international financial centers around the world, the most sophisticated regime and judgments are all in centers where the ecosystem is very developed, right? So in the digital asset space, I dare say that now that as our ecosystem starts to grow, more and more players come because of our progressive regulations. I can imagine more and more cases going to the courts, and I think Linda might freak out. I think in the future you will see that the thought leadership of courts might be actually be driven from ADGM courts, because that's where the digital assets disputes might be most commonly handled, right? So I think to me that that balance and that interaction between progressive regulations and effective and adaptive court system is probably the future of digital asset regulations.
Arina?
What was the question?
Your views about understanding this crypto regulation and what the future might look like, as we were mentioning about different regions taking different approaches. No one has a crystal ball, so I'm not putting you in a spot to give us like a right answer what exactly is the future of regulations, but what, in your opinion, is the future of crypto regulation?
A government that is willing and able and wants this industry here. So I have a pleasure and an honor of spending some of my time of the year in Switzerland, and I see no political will to push the agenda of crypto adoption or crypto regulations. Andre, if you disagree with me, please interfere. I mean, there is a reason why we're here and not in Switzerland, right? So, and while we could be there. So there needs to be a political will, there needs to be a political power to tell the founders, to tell the crypto businesses, multi-billion-dollar businesses now. So the if you remember Malta back in 2018, they wanted to be the blockchain island. Did it happen? No, because EU didn't let them breathe. And fortunately, UAE has enough of political will and has enough of political stability to make their own life decisions, and that's what I love. UAE is doing that. Of course, EU is pressuring very heavily, US is pressuring very heavily. Thank you very much, EU bureaucrats, for the taxes that we have now. I hold you personally liable for that. So there's a lot of, but UAE does stand on their own feet, and that's what I love about being here. So for me, it's the country states, maybe another country state like Singapore. I understand that the retail crypto crypto is not on the agenda, it's more institutional. But if a country state has the political will and the desire, then the regulations will follow. The regulations will follow, positive practice will follow, because there's one thing to have regulations. Malta has the regulations, but what is happening there? Nothing. Actually, last week we received the award for the technology deal, Middle Eastern Technology Team of the Year, for relocating the largest protocol out of Malta, where? To the UAE. We structured it here. Because this is the place where founders want to be, where the protocols want to be, where the developers want to be, where people want to be, right? We are here. So I think independent country state, autonomous country states like UAE is the future.
And just last question, as we are running out of time. Understanding the legal status of crypto so that we can resolve crypto disputes from stakeholders' perspective is one thing, lawyers' perspective is one thing, but ultimately judges are the ones who are going to make decisions. So what can be done to increase that awareness around the legal status of crypto and digital assets?
I really don't envy them. Imagine a deal has happened, the parties to the deal themselves not sure what the deal is, because if you have a deal and you ask 5 different people on 5 different days, they will give you different explanations of what the deal is about. Then a certain time passes, some people move on with their lives, then the dispute goes to a judge, and so I don't really envy them trying to to understand what has happened, to open that can of worms. And what is happening now is specialized technology courts are being established in the UAE. I'm not fully aware if there's a division similar in ADGM, but that is definitely happening in Dubai, for example. So it's very important for judges to be tech savvy, because they receive tech savvy cases. But then what's the average age of a judge? Probably, your grandparents' age. So would you trust them with a Bitcoin wallet, and would you trust them to do that transaction? Probably not. So a lot of, I don't know, I don't have the answer, but I definitely don't envy them. That's why I would always recommend, and I always recommend, that the alternative dispute resolution, such as an arbitration, is probably a preferred dispute resolution for crypto founders, because then you can appoint an arbitrator who is tech savvy, crypto savvy, Bitcoin savvy, and there's no better venue than here in ADGM.
Yeah, I think the most powerful combination where we are at the confluence of technology and and law, right, is to actually have an individual who knows both law and technology. And that individual today is very, very difficult to find. I can say within the regulator, we complement our regulatory skills with technology experts out there. We try to hire some who is technology native, but at the same time has the open-mindedness to learn regulations, right? I think the future, the regulators always say that we are technology agnostic, but that doesn't serve justice to what regulators actually do when it comes to regulating this space, because a lot of our considerations go into understanding the technology. And technology A differs from technology B. Each has a different risk profile. Right? So for a judge to make that call, today, of course, you can rely on expert advisors, but to make the judgment between technology A and B and understand the risk involved and to make a sound judgment, I think it's important that the legal practitioners today and the judges of tomorrow think about how to imbibe that skill set and know-how and future-proof yourself.
Andre?
Yeah, I would continue on that thought. I mean, it all starts with education, but also being attractive to the right talents. And I mean, here, it's super easy to get access to a global talent pool. Everybody can basically come here and work here. While, for example, you mentioned Switzerland before, and it's super difficult to get a work visa for somebody outside of the EU, for example, or outside of Switzerland even. So you need to justify, why do I try to get somebody from Asia, for example, or from the US or so on. So that's super difficult. So I think all starts with education and then having or being attractive enough for the right talents. And of course, then they go into those positions and will do the right thing for sure.
Well, on that note, you want to add something, guys?
No, absolutely. Getting into Switzerland, completely impossible. I did this myself. So, and in the UAE, you have what, 3 days? You have a residency permit, you have a visa, you have a car, you have apartment, your kids are in the best school. I mean, it's just, where would you have such a privilege? Nowhere else.
Well, thanks very much for your valuable insights, and thanks everyone for staying with us for this session. Thank you.